Hi guys and welcome to lesson 7 of our coast unit. Today we are carrying on directly from the work you did on the last lesson, where we are now looking to apply that process of deposition to some depositional landforms. As always, what I'd like to do is to watch this video, and at the end there will be a task which I would like you to upload onto Satchel 1 at the end of watching this clip. And so essentially what we're looking at today is something called a depositional landform. Now, in our previous lesson, we discussed the concept that deposition is where the land and the sea eventually runs out of energy and dumps or deposits bits of sand, shingle, etc. And that's usually because the wave loses energy, so it's protected by a bay, it loses its wind, or it goes into shallow water. And as it deposits material, it can actually change the landscape of a coastline. And we've seen this term before when we looked at erosional landforms in lesson 3 of this unit. And if you recall, a landform is a natural feature of the Earth's surface. And so an erosional landform is a natural feature of the Earth's surface created by erosion. Kind of by direct comparison, a depositional landform is the exact same thing, only a depositional landform is a natural feature of the Earth's surface caused by deposition. So if we think back to that topic, we looked at things like cave, arch, stack and stump, and we looked at headlands and bays as well. And they were examples of erosional landforms. In geography, deposition also causes major landforms. And we're going to look at 3 today, and they are a beach, a spit, and a bar. Okay, so a beach, a spit, and a bar. What we're going to do is we're going to go through each of them in some detail to kind of help you understand what they look like. The first thing I'll say, however, is that because this is deposition, they are all to do with things being built up. So they are all things being built up or created, whereas the erosional landforms were all created by things being destroyed. So let's start off with the beaches. So beaches are made of eroded material. We know that when a cliff is eroded, that material is then transported via longshore drift and deposited somewhere else. And for this to occur, the waves must be constructive, they must have limited energy, and so most beaches tend to form in sheltered areas like bays. And here we go with a bit extra here. There are 2 main types of beaches. We have a sandy beach and a pebble beach. Sandy beaches are usually found where the waves have less energy, and pebble beaches are often found where they've got higher energy, because if they've got higher energy, that means they're able to transport larger pieces of that cliff. So for example, if we're talking about a big piece of rock being broken off a cliff face via maybe physical weathering, freeze thaw, on a pebble beach, because the waves have higher energy, they're actually able to move and deposit them, whereas on a sandy beach, that's not the case. And so essentially all that really happens is, because of constructive waves, because that really strong swash and really weak backwash, the material is built up on the beach, and as it does so, over time, that leads to the formation of a beach, and they tend to get built up over time. A spit is a slightly more alien concept, because we've never seen a spit before, and they are quite strange. So basically, a spit is an extended stretch of sand that juts out into the sea, so it sticks out. So if I go back to my first picture here, this small area is the spit. So this is the normal land, like so, the green, and this is the area of land that is now jutting out of the land, sticking out, and we call that a spit. And essentially, they tend to occur when there's a change in the shape of the landscape or there is a river mouth, and they both kind of cause their formation. But to really understand how these form, we'll look at a little diagram here. So let's start off with our first process. Firstly, we have the process of longshore drift. Longshore drift is moving the sediment in the direction of the prevailing wind. Okay? Eventually, Because the landscape changes shape, eventually the land kind of ends here, which means in the past this would have been open water. But because the longshore drift and the wind still have lots of energy, the pieces of sediment continue to be deposited out into the open ocean. Okay, so they tend to be deposited out into the ocean, and that basically results in new land being formed that then sticks out from the original land. So if we go back to our image here, we can see that in theory there would have been longshore drift happening along this coastline until eventually it ends up here, and the change in the direction means that it continues depositing material out into the sea. Okay, and that is a key depositional landform, and it is created in that way. So if you're going to ask an exam question about this, what I've done here is I've taken the 4 key points you would need. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to pause the video for 30 seconds and read through those 4 statements. Okay, hopefully you've had a little read of those. And so the first thing to point out is that sediment is carried by longshore drift. Because there's a change in the coastline, deposition occurs and that rigid material is deposited, and that is called a spit. Okay, so beaches and spits, both depositional landforms, both caused in some way by deposition. However, sometimes a spit can actually grow across a bay and join 2 headlands together. And this landform is known as a bar. So this is what I'm showing here. And so we've got our 2 headlands here and here. We've got our direction of longshore drift. And the difference here is that with a spit, it's still allowing water to flow. Whereas a bar only happens if this process carries on. So over time, it might be the case that as the direction of longshore drift continues, it actually deposits more and more material, so it actually blocks off an area here. It's called a bar. You can see that on this first image over here, where it ends up creating this kind of full beach like this. Right, so where the spit has joined up between 2 headlands, we're getting a bar being created. And I think the key point to make here is that this is happening because the prevailing wind is strong, and as it is strong, it is allowing enough energy for deposition. If you've ever heard the term lagoon before, that's what tends to be left behind by this process. So if you are doing this, behind this bar would likely be water where the old bay once was. Now we've got to remember this doesn't happen overnight. This bar would slowly be forming over time until eventually it connects to the 2 headlands. It leaves a lagoon behind it, and you might think eventually this might dry out eventually, but usually they are still supplied with water from waves and storms, etc. So that's that. And so to finish off then, guys, and really make that clear, there are 3 main depositional landforms: beaches, spits, and bars. These all relate to the concept that the coast is one connected system. The material that is accumulated in this spit or this bar is the same material that will have been eroded further down the coastline. So as that material is eroded, it is then transported via longshore drift, it is then deposited to make these new landforms. And I think that's a really important thing to fully understand when it comes to this topic in particular. And so to finish off then, guys, as always, there are 3 review questions I would like you to have a look at. The first one is, what type of wave is needed for a beach to form? The second, explain how a spit is formed. And thirdly, explain the formation of a bar. For those last 2 questions, I really want to make sure you've written them in your own words, and they need to be full sentences. If you are hand drawing things and you want to hand draw a diagram, that would probably be quite beneficial. If you feel like you want to go into more detail with this as well, if you do some of your own research, there are plenty of other diagrams that you could use. But please don't just copy and paste me a paragraph for like BBC Bats or something, because I won't really be too impressed with that. But 3 questions, and as always, answer the full sentences and upload onto Satchel 1. If you have any questions about this video or this lesson, please view the live Zoom link, or alternatively, please ask me via Satchel 1.